I visited my brother Mark in the big city last summer. He lived in a rundown neighborhood that had a reputation for being dangerous. I knew that already, because this was not the first time that I visited him. The last time I was there, one of his neighbors called the police for a break-in. We watched from the front living room. Mark told me about some other things that happened, like that his friend was mugged on his way home, and that he saw a bullet on the sidewalk once. Not one that was shot, more like someone dropped it and didn't bother to pick it up. All in all, it was a really sketchy place. I arrived on a Friday evening, ready for a relaxing weekend. I was oblivious to the terrifying events that would soon unfold. Mark's small house was an older place, among other dilapidated structures. It was actually an apartment. He had the main floor of the house. There was only one bedroom at the back. As a result, I was relegated to sleeping in the living room at the front of the house. I settled onto the creaky old couch on the first night. We got up the next day and hung out around the city and then went for some drinks. On the second evening, I went to sleep on the couch again in the living room. Suddenly, I was jolted awake by the sounds of shouting echoing from the streets. I was disoriented and alarmed, and I sat up. Then I stumbled to the window, pulling back the curtains. My heart pounded as I witnessed a strange scene unfolding before my eyes. Two men stood in the middle of the dimly lit street. Their voices strained with anger. Words were exchanged, but I couldn't tell what they were saying. They were angry, though. At least one of them was really angry. Suddenly, one of the men reached into his waistband, revealing a gun. He pointed it at the other guy. The unarmed man raised his hands in surrender, pleading for mercy. His fear was palpable, and I could feel my own pulse quicken. Without any warning, the desperate man turned and bolted. It was only a few steps before he was out of my sight. The man with the gun stood still for a few seconds. Then he raised the gun and fired. My heart skipped a beat, and I stopped breathing. Was the fleeing man hit? Did he manage to escape? I had no idea. I ducked out of the window, afraid of being seen. After about a minute, I gasped for breath, only then realizing that I had stopped breathing. I rushed to my brother's room and softly knocked on his door. "Mark, wake up. Something just happened outside," I whispered. To my astonishment, Mark stirred lazily, seemingly unperturbed. He rolled over and mumbled, "Relax, Dave. This kind of thing happens all the time around here. Just go back to sleep." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I explained to him what happened, and when I told him that a shot was fired, he got serious. I don't know how he didn't hear it, but he always was a deep sleeper, and his room was also at the back of the house. I didn't waste any more time, and I dialed the police. I told them the details. The operator assured me that they would send a patrol car to investigate the situation. I peered through the blinds anxiously, scanning the dark streets for any sign of movement. The gunman must have been long gone by then. The police arrived, and they conducted their investigation. I told them what I had seen, but I couldn't really tell any details about the man. I left the next day, but I talked to Mark about the incident later. He told me that the shooter was caught, and that the shot luckily missed the man. The stray bullet hit a parked car. It could have been much worse. I had just finished a long day at work, and I was looking forward to returning to the comfort of my apartment. It was late at night, and the city streets were empty as I made my way home. It was a warm night in the summer, so I decided to walk. When I got close, I could see my building in the distance. It was an old 3-story building, and my place was on the second floor. My window overlooked an alley, and there was a fire escape on the outside. I would go out there sometimes to smoke. Being that it was the summer, and my building didn't have air conditioning, I left that window open pretty much all the time for the warmer months of the year. When I got into my building, I climbed the single flight of stairs, eager to relax and unwind. It was just past midnight by then. I stepped into my apartment and turned on the light switch. It felt good to be home, and I let out a tired sigh. But that feeling was short-lived, as I noticed something was wrong. A faint creaking sound reached my ears, as if coming from the direction of my bedroom. I also felt a presence. I lived alone at the time, so I was worried when I heard that noise. The floors creaked in many areas, but I recognized that specific creak as coming from my bedroom. Even though I was exhausted, I was pretty sure of what I heard. I know I should have left and called the cops right there, but I couldn't resist checking it out. I cautiously made my way down the hallway, my senses on high alert. Every step felt heavier, as if I were tiptoeing through a minefield. My bedroom door was closed, and when I put my hand on the handle, I heard another creak. For some reason that I can't explain, instead of running away or opening the door, I knocked. I know, it makes no sense. I knocked on my own bedroom door, as if to give the intruder the respect of not barging in. I held my breath, bracing myself for whatever lay on the other side. I heard nothing in response. I began to think that it was my imagination, so I decided to open the door. With trembling hands, I pushed the door open. I saw a figure huddled in the corner near my closet. It seemed to be a woman, but I was not sure at the moment. They didn't seem to move, so I slowly backed out and closed the door. Then I ran out the front door and locked it behind me. After I was a few blocks away, I took out my phone and called the cops. They met me in front of my building, and I told them everything. Within minutes, they were taking the person out of my building. Now that I got a better look at the person, I could tell it was actually a man with long hair. He was thin, but with loose, baggy clothing. I also later found out that he had a knife, taken from my kitchen. Luckily, nobody was hurt, even the intruder. After the cops left, I was left alone in my apartment, but how could I sleep? I know that person got in through my fire escape, and there was nothing stopping another from doing the same. I closed the window, but that gave me little comfort. I told my landlord the next day, hoping there would be some way to prevent something like that from happening in the future. However, they refused to do anything. I never felt comfortable in that place again, and I moved out as soon as I could afford to. That caused me many sleepless nights. I'm a paramedic in North Carolina, and I'm experiencing something strange in my apartment. A tenant died in that apartment in December of 2017 from an overdose. She was a younger female that recently had a baby and was found holding her newborn by EMS when she was deceased. I did know this before I moved in, but I did not see it as a big deal because of the field I work in. I'm a strong believer in the paranormal as well. I've been in this apartment for 10 months, and I've not experienced anything strange until 2 days ago. For the past month and a half, when I attempted to go to sleep like a normal person, I work the night shift, so I normally sleep during the day. When I'm off, I've been waking up between 3 and 3:30 a.m. for an unknown reason. Sometimes I have to use the bathroom, and I attribute it to that, but that's very rare. I have a dog and a cat, so I sleep with my door open. That way they can roam freely, but since I've been waking up at that time, I always wake up anxious and with my heart racing with the feeling that I'm not alone. 2 days ago, I woke up at 3:12 a.m. to what sounded like a woman screaming in my ear. I awoke startled and was just confused. After that, I couldn't fall back asleep. I ran a bath at around 4:30 to relax, and upon getting out, I heard a strange sound coming from the front of the apartment. When I went out there, I noticed the light cover was hanging. I thought it was strange, but honestly, I didn't worry about it. Later in the morning, I went to breakfast with my mom and told her what happened. She's a strong believer herself. Afterwards, I went grocery shopping, and my brother came with me. While putting my groceries away, my mom called and told me to come to her apartment. After getting there, my mom asked me if my brother and I were messing with her at any point. Confused, my brother and I said no. My mother said she was lying in bed when she heard 3 loud knocks on her bedroom door. Upon opening it, nobody was there. Skip forward to 2 a.m. I was sitting on the couch watching a movie with my friend. I have a large sectional that blocks the sliding glass door to my balcony. I live on the second floor, with no access to the balcony except through that door, which was blocked. My friend and I both heard 2 knocks on the door. Looking out, I saw nothing, so I decided to ignore it. I went to bed at 7 a.m., since I worked that night. My dog hopped onto the bed and stared at the ceiling above me for 20 minutes. She then moved to the end of the bed and refused to sleep where she normally did, which would have been right next to me. Meanwhile, the cat was sprinting around the apartment and meowing loudly, which was unlike his character. That day, I decided to sleep with my parents because I had an uneasy feeling when I was in my apartment. My brother and his girlfriend went with me to my apartment to gather belongings for work the next evening. I once again felt uneasy when I met the front door. I gathered what I needed, locked the door, and went down to the car. Prior to getting to the apartment, my brother was skeptical and commented, "I'll believe you if whatever it was in there moves the blinds or something." In my living room, covering the sliding glass door, were long blinds that almost every apartment has. As soon as we reached the car and unlocked the door, something in my gut told me to look up. When I did, I saw the blinds slowly moving left to right. I pointed this out to my brother and his girlfriend, and at that point, my brother finally believed me. I don't know if I brought a spirit home from work, or if something disturbed the spirit that died in that apartment, but I have done nothing different from when I moved in. I'm going to cleanse that apartment myself and smudge. I'll update if anything else happens. This incident happened 7 or 8 years ago, and only a few people will believe what happened to me on this icy, snowy night. I worked 45 minutes away from where I was living at the time. I worked at a pizza restaurant, and I was one of those lucky people that had to help close. When me and my other 2 coworkers left, we were stuck in front of the building for a while, trying to get the snow and ice off of our cars. We weren't used to the weather, because we lived in Texas, so the ice and snow was a new thing for us. I never had to drive in that kind of weather until then. After I got my windshield cleaned off, I contemplated driving to my place, which was 45 minutes away, or going to my parents' house, which was 3 minutes away. They had my sister's old room, and still had her bed. I decided not to risk my life, and called my parents to make sure that it was okay for me to come over. Of course they said yes, and I drove there slowly. As soon as I got inside, I got ready for bed, and went to sleep. I'm not sure what time it was, but I ended up waking up in the middle of the night. I don't know why I woke up. All I knew next after I was aware that I was awake was that I felt hands on both my feet. I was being pulled by them at the end of the bed. I honestly didn't know what to do, so I froze and started panicking, but I tried my best not to show that I was. After a few seconds that felt like minutes, the tugging stopped. I finally started to calm down when I felt something sliding up next to me and wrap its arms around me. No one else could have been there in that room with me. My parents' room was in the back of the house, and the room I was staying in was at the side close to the front. My brother's room was next to the one that I was in, but he was a heavy sleeper and never woke up to get into somebody else's bed. He was never that kind of kid. I was very confused to feel what was going on and started panicking again. Next thing I knew, I heard a little boy giggle, like around the age of 5 or 7. Funny story is that 8 years before then, I was in a car accident with my family and lost my brother. Ever since then, I've noticed a couple of things, but never thought anything of it. To be honest, I thought it was him with me, but I was so terrified that I passed out from being scared. I woke up to my alarm the next morning and got ready for work. I told my parents what happened that night, and they looked at me like I was crazy. I've told my sister, and she said she experienced something close to that, but she sensed it was an older woman. I'm now 26, and I see things here and there in almost every place I go, and I can't really talk to anybody about it without being made fun of.